They said he could make or break a man's life with one phone call. But when the time came, no one picked up for him. Jimmy Hoffa, Labor's Lion, America's Mystery. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true stories that never stop echoing through time. Detroit, 1975. The heat sat heavy over the parking lot of the Machu's Red Fox restaurant. Hoffa stood by his car, straight-backed, suit crisp, glancing at his watch like a man who ran on schedule, not fate. "They're late," he muttered. A small thing, but for Jimmy, lateness was disrespect. To the world, he was the face of the Teamsters, a man who fought for workers with iron fists and secret handshakes. To those who knew him better, he was something else, the bridge between power and the streets. Even the Mafia respected him. Even the feds feared him. But that afternoon, the bridge cracked. And by sunset, Jimmy Hoffa, one of the most powerful men in America, was gone. Vanished. No ransom. No trace. No goodbye. And the truth, it's still out there, waiting under the asphalt. I wasn't born powerful. I was born hungry. Ever since I was a kid in Brazil, Indiana, I knew the world didn't hand you respect, you had to drag it out of people. My father died when I was 7. From that day, I decided, no man would ever decide my worth again. We were poor, the kind of poor where dinner was hope and tomorrow was a gamble. I watched men work themselves to the bone while their bosses drove home in new cars. That burned something in me. When I joined the labor movement, I didn't just see it as a job, it was war. You want loyalty? I used to say. Then feed your men first. And I meant it. Every handshake, every favor, every risk, all built on that simple rule. By the 1940s, the Teamsters were my family, and I was their bulldog. I spoke for men who had no voice, fought for them when no one else would. But power doesn't grow clean, it grows in shadows. And sometimes, those shadows start to whisper your name. They say every empire starts with a deal, and mine began in the back of a Detroit warehouse. The air smelled of oil and sweat, the kind of place where men traded favors faster than paychecks. I saw how things worked. If you wanted trucks to move, docks to open, or strikes to end, you didn't call a politician. You called me. I made sure my men got paid, their families fed, and their loyalty rewarded. But loyalty, like anything valuable, had a price. The mob knew that. They came dressed in suits sharper than knives, talking about mutual interests. I didn't flinch. "You help me grow," I said, "and I'll keep the roads open for everyone." They smiled, and the handshake that followed built an empire stretching coast to coast. Soon, the Teamsters weren't just a union. We were a kingdom, moving billions through our pension fund, building highways, casinos, even dreams. Reporters called me dangerous. Workers called me brother. But with every newspaper headline came another pair of eyes watching from the dark, men in government cars, taking notes, waiting. And I should have known, every rise draws its own fall. By the 1950s, I wasn't just running a union, I was running a nation within a nation. Every dock, every driver, every shipment that rolled across America had to move through us. You wanted milk on your table, steel in your city, food in your store? That was Jimmy Hoffa's world making it happen. I ruled it like a general, not with violence, but with presence. When I walked into a meeting, men stood up. When I spoke, silence followed. "You keep your word," I'd say, "or you don't belong here." Even the Mafia bosses, the same men who once ran the streets, treated me like an equal. We made deals that built America's skyline, while the politicians pretended not to notice. But power has a strange rhythm. The higher it climbs, the quieter the air gets, until all you hear is your own voice echoing back. And that's when you start to wonder who's really listening. Some called me fearless. Others said I'd made too many promises to too many devils. I called it balance. But every empire built on handshakes eventually meets the one hand that won't shake back. It started small, a missed meeting, a whisper, a glance that didn't last long enough. Loyalty, it's a fragile thing. You can build it for decades, and it can crumble in a single phone call. By the early 60s, I could feel it. Some of my own men, the ones I'd fed, protected, made kings, were now shaking hands behind closed doors. The mob wanted more control. The government wanted blood. And my so-called friends? They just wanted to survive. Then came Bobby Kennedy. The kid had fire in his eyes and a vendetta in his heart. He called me a national menace. I called him a spoiled crusader. Every hearing, every headline, it was a war of words fought under bright lights. But what hurt most wasn't the politicians. It was my own people, men I'd trusted, testifying, cutting deals, saving themselves. I watched their faces on the news and thought, so this is how loyalty dies. I tightened my circle, but the cracks had already spread. And deep down, I knew, once a man starts looking over his shoulder, he's already losing the fight. They say paranoia is when you imagine enemies. But mine were real, they wore badges. By the late 60s, I could feel them everywhere. Black cars parked too long across the street. Clicks on my phone line. Faces in crowds that didn't belong there. The FBI wasn't just watching me, they were building a case brick by brick, like I was some monument they planned to tear down. I'd built my life on loyalty and order, but now, I trusted no one. Even in my own meetings, I'd stop mid-sentence if someone coughed wrong. You working for them now? I'd joke, half serious, half afraid of the answer. When they finally came for me in '67, it wasn't with guns. It was with files, thick, cold folders full of testimonies from men I'd once called brothers. They said I'd stolen millions. I said I'd built millions of paychecks. But the truth didn't matter anymore. In America, once they decide you're the villain, you don't get to tell your side of the story. As they led me away in handcuffs, one thought echoed in my mind. If they think prison will break me, they don't know Jimmy Hoffa. Prison changes a man, not just his routine, but his rhythm. They took my suit, my schedule, my voice. But they couldn't take my will. I woke up every morning at 5. Made my bed. Walked the yard. Even behind bars, I ran things, laundry shifts, food trades, respect. Some guards hated it. Others admired it. One of them once said, "Hoffa, you run this place like a union." I smiled. That's because everything's a union if you know how to organize it. But power in confinement is a shadow of what it was. The world outside kept moving, the Teamsters under new faces, the mob shifting its loyalties, the government celebrating my fall. And when I finally walked out after nearly a decade, I realized I'd been replaced, not just as a leader, but as a legend. Still, I wasn't done. I'll get my seat back, I told anyone who'd listen. The union's mine. Always was. But the new generation didn't want me back. The mob didn't want the heat. And the FBI? They wanted me to disappear quietly. They should have known, Jimmy Hoffa never did anything quietly. Freedom felt smaller than I remembered. The first night out, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone like it was an old friend who'd stopped calling. The world had changed, new cars, new faces, new rules. But the name Hoffa still carried weight and danger. I tried rebuilding, reaching out to old allies, but the silence was louder than any answer. Meetings canceled. Calls ignored. Even the union men I'd made into millionaires kept their distance. One of them finally told me, quietly, "They say you're bad for business now, Jimmy." That's when it hit me, I wasn't free. I was boxed in. The walls weren't made of concrete anymore, they were made of fear. Still, I refused to fade. "You can't erase me," I'd tell the mirror. Not yet. I started planning my comeback, meetings with mob contacts, talks with old Teamster friends. I told my wife, it's time they remembered who built this house. But every move I made drew eyes, too many eyes. Even friends warned me to stop digging. And when you live in a world of secrets, you learn one truth early. Sometimes, the digging's what gets you buried. By the summer of 1975, I was 62, but I didn't feel old, Not yet. I still believed I could walk back into the Teamsters office and take my chair. I'd built that empire brick by brick, surely they wouldn't lock me out of my own house. But power doesn't return phone calls. And loyalty, once broken, doesn't rebuild, it just smiles and shakes your hand before it forgets you. I spent my mornings pacing the living room, the clock ticking like an insult. My wife begged me to let it go. "You've done enough, Jimmy," she said softly. I shook my head. They owe me the truth. Still, part of me knew, I was chasing ghosts. The men I'd once commanded now took orders from others. My name, once spoken with pride, now came with warnings. And yet, people still recognized me. At diners, at gas stations, truckers, old workers, their eyes lighting up like they'd seen a piece of history. "You fought for us, Jimmy," they'd say. I'd nod, smile faintly, and think, yeah, and I paid for it too. Because every legacy has two sides, the one the world remembers, and the one that remembers you back. They say a man dies twice, once when his heart stops, and once when his name is spoken for the last time. If that's true, then I never really died. July 30th, 1975. I drove out to meet two old associates at the Machu's Red Fox in Bloomfield Township. A public place, daylight, witnesses, no reason to worry. I wore my best suit, the same one I'd worn the day I took over the Teamsters. I even brought a gift for my grandson. By 2:30 p.m., I was gone. Some say the mob silenced me. Others whisper about the government, a secret deal gone wrong, or a burial beneath concrete. But the truth? Maybe I walked too long between two worlds, power and principle, until both decided I didn't belong anymore. Still, I don't want pity. I had what most men only dream of: respect, fear, loyalty. For a while, I even had America's ear. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Power fades. Loyalty breaks. But legacy, that's written by the people you once stood for. I outlived the world I built, not because I was lucky, but because I never broke my word. Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more true gangster stories like this one.